You've spent your whole life being told that anger is ugly. That good people don't get angry. That empaths especially shouldn't feel rage because feeling deeply means feeling everything softly, gently, without sharp edges. You've been taught that your anger is a flaw to be hidden, a weakness to be managed, a failure of character that proves you're not as evolved as you thought. So you've swallowed it. Every single time. You've smiled when you wanted to scream. You've said yes when every fiber of your being screamed no. You've absorbed rage that wasn't yours to carry and apologized for feeling hurt. You've transformed your legitimate anger into guilt, shame, and the belief that something is fundamentally wrong with you for ever getting angry in the first place. Carl Jung understood something most people miss. Your anger isn't the problem. It's the solution trying to get your attention. Jung taught that the shadow, the parts of yourself you've been taught to reject, becomes most dangerous not when it emerges, but when it stays buried. And for the empath, anger has been buried so deep that most people don't even know you can feel it. You've become so skilled at translating your rage into understanding, your hurt into compassion for the person who hurt you, that the anger itself has become invisible. Even to you. But it's there. It's always been there. Collecting like storm clouds, gathering force, waiting for the moment when your defenses finally crack enough to let it through. The empath's anger isn't like other people's anger. It doesn't emerge from ego or pride or a need to be right. It emerges from something much deeper, a primal recognition that you are being betrayed. That you are being used. That the boundaries you were supposed to have were erased long before you even knew what a boundary was. Your anger is sacred because it's the voice of your soul saying, I matter. I deserve better than this. I will not disappear into someone else's needs anymore. Think about where this anger comes from. Not from this moment, this betrayal, this specific relationship. But from years, maybe your whole life, of making yourself smaller to fit into spaces too small for you. From learning that your feelings were too much, your needs were inconvenient, your sensitivity was a burden to be managed rather than honored. From being asked, over and over again, to prove that you were worth protecting. From being told that loving someone meant sacrificing yourself. Your anger isn't new. It's ancient. It's the accumulation of every time you said I'm fine when you were breaking. Every time you prioritized someone else's comfort over your own survival. Every time you saw someone hurting and ignored the voice inside you screaming not your job, not your responsibility, you cannot save this person. Every time you ignored that voice and tried anyway. The empath's anger is sacred because it's connected to your life force. It's the part of you that refuses to die. The part that says enough. The part that finally, after all these years, is willing to fight back, not against other people, but for yourself. Jung believed that the privilege of a lifetime is becoming who you truly are. But you can't become who you truly are while you're performing who everyone else needs you to be. And you can't perform who everyone else needs you to be while your anger is suffocating inside your chest, demanding to be acknowledged, refusing to be silenced anymore. The problem isn't your anger. The problem is that you've been taught that expressing it makes you bad. Your mother told you that angry people are dangerous. Your religion told you that anger is sinful. Your culture told you that women who express anger are crazy, men who express it are aggressive, and empaths who express it are betraying their very nature. So you learned to hide it. To smile while you were dying inside. To apologize for setting boundaries. To feel guilty for having needs. But that hiding is costing you everything. The energy it takes to suppress your anger doesn't disappear. It goes into your body, your nervous system, your psyche. It manifests as anxiety, depression, physical illness, chronic fatigue. It shows up as the constant undercurrent of dread beneath your daily life. It emerges as the feeling that something is fundamentally wrong with you, when the only thing wrong with you is that you've been taught to betray yourself in the name of being nice. Jung taught that what we refuse to face in ourselves, we project onto the world. The empath who refuses to acknowledge their anger doesn't stop being angry, they just stop being honest about it. Their anger leaks out sideways, in passive-aggressive comments, in overgiving that breeds resentment, in staying in situations that destroy them because acknowledging the anger that should send them running would mean admitting they've been wrong all along. But here's what happens when you finally allow yourself to feel your anger. everything changes. Your anger is the moment you stop abandoning yourself. It's the moment you finally prioritize your own well-being over someone else's comfort. It's the moment you realize that protecting your peace isn't cruelty, it's sanity. Your anger is the sacred boundary between who you were and who you're becoming. And yes, it will terrify people. The people around you have become comfortable with your endless availability, your automatic understanding, your willingness to absorb their emotions without ever asking them to absorb yours. When you get angry, when you finally, after all these years, refuse to shrink yourself anymore, they won't recognize you. They'll call you selfish. They'll say you've changed. They'll accuse you of being cold or cruel or ungrateful. But what they're really saying is, I missed the version of you that was destroying herself for me. Your anger is sacred because it's the truth. It's the most honest thing you'll ever feel. When everything else in your life is performance and accommodation and translation, your anger is the only thing that's real. It can't be faked. It can't be negotiated away. It can't be explained into acceptance by someone who's determined to misunderstand you. Jung understood that the shadow, all the parts of yourself you've rejected, holds 90% gold. Your anger is that gold. It's the fire that will forge you into someone unbreakable. It's the force that will finally push you away from people who don't deserve you. It's the voice that will say, for the first time in your life, what you actually need and refuse to apologize for needing it. The transformation doesn't happen by getting rid of your anger. It happens by transforming pleasing into presence. By choosing your own presence, your own voice, your own needs, your own boundaries, over the comfort of people who benefit from your erasure. Your anger is the herald of this transformation. It arrives to tell you that you matter. That your life belongs to you. That you are allowed to take up space without permission. That you are allowed to feel rage at being betrayed by people you loved. That you are allowed to protect yourself even if it disappoints them. This is where the sacred journey begins. There's a moment that comes for every empath, the moment when the anger finally breaks through. It doesn't announce itself politely. It doesn't ask permission. It arrives like a storm that's been gathering force behind closed doors, and suddenly, the doors blow open. Maybe it happens during a conversation where you realize, for the 1000th time, that the other person isn't even trying to understand you. Maybe it happens when you see someone you love destroying themselves with the same patterns, asking for the same help, ignoring the same advice, and you finally understand, this isn't your job. Maybe it happens in the middle of the night when you're alone with your thoughts, and you realize how much of your life you've given away to people who wouldn't give you an hour in return. And then the anger comes. Not the polite kind you can swallow. Not the manageable kind you can translate into compassion. But real, raw, primal rage at the injustice of it all. Rage at yourself for staying so long. Rage at them for taking so much. Rage at a world that taught you that your sensitivity was something to apologize for instead of something to celebrate. Carl Jung called this the eruption of the shadow. And it terrifies you because you've never felt anything like it before. Because in all your years of being the understanding one, the patient one, the one who sees the good in everyone, you've never allowed yourself to feel this much anger. You're convinced that feeling it means you're becoming a bad person. That expressing it means you're betraying your nature. That acknowledging it proves everything the narcissist said about you was true. But it's not true. And this is the most important thing you need to understand. Your anger doesn't make you bad. Your anger makes you honest. For years you've been lying? Not with words, but with your presence. You've been showing up for people who wouldn't show up for you. You've been offering understanding to people who offered you criticism. You've been giving energy to people who gave you nothing but exhaustion in return. Every time you smiled when you wanted to cry, every time you said it's okay when it wasn't, every time you apologized for someone else's cruelty, you were lying. Your anger is the truth finally emerging. And yes, it's messy. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it doesn't fit the image of the perfect empath that society has constructed. But it's real. And real is the only thing that can save you. Jung taught that the meeting with oneself is the most unpleasant thing that can be avoided. When the empath meets their anger, they're meeting themselves for the first time. Not the sanitized version they've presented to the world. not the performance of endless compassion and bottomless patience. But the real version, the one with limits, with needs, with the capacity to say no and mean it. This meeting is terrifying because it means admitting that you're not who you thought you were. You're not endlessly available. You're not infinitely patient. You're not incapable of being angry. You're human. Gloriously, frustratingly, messily human. And the people around you will panic when they discover this. Because they've built their entire relationship with you on the assumption that you're different. That you're the safe one, the stable one, the one who will never hurt them the way they've hurt you. When you get angry, when you finally assert a boundary that inconveniences them, they'll act like you've committed a betrayal. But you haven't betrayed anyone. You've just stopped betraying yourself. The transformation from pleasing to presence begins when you stop performing for an audience that will never appreciate the performance anyway. The narcissist will call you selfish no matter how much you sacrifice. The emotional vampire will say you're cold no matter how many times you've been there for them. The person using you will claim you're abandoning them the moment you stop being available. Their words don't change the truth. The truth is that you gave too much. The truth is that you stayed too long. The truth is that your anger is justified. And the truth is that expressing it is the bravest thing you'll ever do. Jung believed that the most intense conflicts, if overcome, leave behind a sense of security that is not easily disturbed. The empath's conflict with their own anger is one of the most intense conflicts of their life. Because it's not just about being angry at someone else, it's about being angry at yourself for accepting the unacceptable, for ignoring the red flags, for choosing to believe in someone's potential instead of protecting yourself from their reality. When you finally work through that conflict instead of running from it, something miraculous happens. You develop a security that no external force can shake. Because you're no longer dependent on other people's approval to know your own worth. You're no longer seeking validation from people who wouldn't recognize your value if it appeared in neon lights. You're finally, after all these years, your own authority. The transformation accelerates as you realize something shocking. Your anger has been trying to save you the whole time. Every moment you felt rage at a situation but swallowed it, your anger was screaming, "Get out of this." Every time you felt fury at how you were being treated but translated it into understanding, your anger was begging, "Protect yourself." Every time you felt rage at your own behavior but blamed yourself instead of the people who made you feel you had no choice, your anger was fighting to keep you alive. Your anger wasn't the enemy. It was the lifeline you kept refusing to grab. Carl Jung understood that the shadow contains not just darkness but also untapped potential, power, and authentic emotion. Your anger holds all of that. It holds the power to set boundaries. It holds the potential to finally choose yourself. It holds authentic emotion that's been suffocating inside you, waiting for permission to exist. And here's the sacred part: you don't need anyone's permission anymore. When you transform pleasing into presence, you're not becoming angry. You're becoming honest. You're not becoming cold. You're becoming clear. You're not betraying your empathy. You're finally protecting it by only offering it to people who deserve it. The people around you will struggle with this. They'll miss the version of you that was disappearing into their needs. They'll call you selfish, ungrateful, different. But beneath those accusations is a simple truth: they're grieving the loss of your availability, and they're processing that grief by trying to make you feel guilty for reclaiming your own life. Don't fall for it. Your anger knows better. Your anger knows that you matter. Your anger knows that your time is precious. Your anger knows that your presence, your real presence, not your performance, is worth more than the endless pleasing you've been offering to people who take it for granted. This is where the transformation truly begins, when you finally, after all these years, get angry enough to choose yourself. When your anger becomes the sacred boundary between who you were and who you're becoming. When you realize that your rage isn't something to be ashamed of, it's something to be grateful for, because it means you're still alive enough to feel it. Your anger is sacred. And it's here to save you. The anger doesn't come all at once and then disappear. It comes in waves. Some days it's a quiet fury simmering beneath the surface of your daily life. Other days it's a tsunami that threatens to sweep away everything you've carefully constructed. And on those days, you realize something that terrifies and liberates you simultaneously. You have been angry this whole time. You've just been too well trained to admit it. Carl Jung wrote that the meeting with the shadow is the apprentice piece, but learning to live with the shadow is the masterpiece. For the empath, this masterpiece is learning to live with their anger, not being controlled by it, not suppressing it, but integrating it into who they are. Acknowledging that yes, you can be both compassionate and furious. Yes, you can be both understanding and unwilling to tolerate disrespect. Yes, you can be an empath with boundaries so solid that people bounce off them like they're made of stone. The second stage of transformation is where you stop being afraid of your own anger. This is harder than it sounds because your anger carries so much weight. It carries the pain of every time you were used. It carries the shame of every boundary you didn't set. It carries the grief of every version of yourself you abandoned to make room for someone else. But it also carries truth. Pure, undeniable, life-changing truth. As you sit with your anger instead of running from it, you start to understand what it's been trying to tell you all along. Your anger about that relationship? It was telling you that you were being exploited. Your rage at yourself for staying? It was telling you that you knew better and ignored your own wisdom. Your fury at the world for making you feel like your sensitivity was a weakness? It was telling you that you've been believing lies about yourself. And now that you're finally listening, everything shifts. Jung believed that consciousness is created through the confrontation of opposites. The empath has spent their whole life in one direction, giving, understanding, accommodating, shrinking. Now consciousness arrives in the form of the opposite, taking, asserting, refusing, expanding. Your anger is the confrontation between these opposites. And in that confrontation, a new version of you is being born. This new version isn't cold or cruel. It's just honest. When someone asks you for help and you don't want to give it, you say no. When someone shares something you've heard 100 times before from them, the same crisis, the same pattern, the same refusal to change, you don't pretend this time will be different. When someone treats you with disrespect and expects you to absorb it silently, you finally say something. The people around you will not like this new version. They will miss the old one desperately. Because the old version was so useful. So convenient. So endlessly available to manage their emotions and fix their problems and make them feel better about themselves. The new version requires reciprocity. The new version has standards. The new version will leave. This is when your anger becomes your greatest protection. Because it keeps you from sliding back into the old patterns. It reminds you every time you're tempted to say yes to something that drains you. It whispers, remember how this felt. Remember why you left. Remember that this person has never given you what you gave them. The anger that felt like it might destroy you becomes the thing that saves you. As you continue to sit with your anger, you begin to understand its texture. It's not uniform. Some of it is righteous, the anger at being treated poorly by people you trusted. Some of it is at yourself, the anger at your own complicity in your suffering. Some of it is old, ancestral even, the anger inherited from generations of people, especially women, who were taught that their feelings didn't matter. Jung taught that the shadow is not evil. It is amoral, it simply is. Your anger is the same way. It's not good or bad. It simply exists. And the moment you stop trying to judge it or fix it or get rid of it, you can finally use it. You use it to fuel your boundaries. You use it to propel yourself away from people who don't deserve you. You use it to say no without guilt. You use it to protect your peace without explaining yourself. You use it to choose yourself when choosing yourself will disappoint everyone around you. The transformation from pleasing to presence accelerates in this stage, because you're no longer trying to be acceptable to everyone. You're being real with everyone. And real is either attractive or repulsive depending on who's receiving it. The people who are attracted to your performance leave. The people who are using your kindness disappear. But the people who are waiting for you to be real, they stay. They see you. They honor you. They reciprocate. This is when the empath discovers what healthy relationships feel like. Not exhausting. Not requiring constant management. Not dependent on you disappearing. Relationships where you can be angry and the other person doesn't punish you for it. Relationships where you can have needs and the other person respects them. Relationships where presence is mutual instead of one-directional. Carl Jung understood that what you integrate becomes your strength. The empath who integrates their anger doesn't become an angry person, they become a person who can't be pushed around. They become someone who can witness suffering without automatically assuming responsibility for it. They become someone who can love deeply without losing themselves in the process. And this is revolutionary. Because for your whole life, you've been told that those things are contradictory. That you have to choose between being empathetic and having boundaries. That you have to choose between loving someone and protecting yourself. That you have to choose between being sensitive and being strong. But your anger is teaching you the truth, you don't have to choose. You can be all of these things simultaneously. You can feel deeply and still say no. You can love someone and still walk away. You can be sensitive to others' pain without drowning in it yourself. This integration is sacred work. It's the work of becoming whole. Not by rejecting your empathy, but by refusing to weaponize it against yourself. Not by becoming hard, but by becoming discerning. Not by closing your heart, but by finally protecting it. Jung wrote that the meeting with the shadow belongs to the more unpleasant things one can experience because up until that moment you had identified with the mask, the performance, the carefully constructed persona. But when you meet your anger, your real, raw, legitimate anger, you meet yourself. Not the version everyone wanted you to be, but the version that's been fighting to survive underneath all the performance. And once you meet that version, you can never go back to the pretense. You can never unknow what you now know about yourself. You can never unsee the ways you've been used. You can never unremember the moments you should have been angry but weren't. Your anger has awakened you. And there's no going back to sleep. The transformation deepens as you realize that your anger isn't about revenge or making anyone suffer. It's about self-respect. It's about finally saying, I deserve better than this. My time deserves better than this. My energy deserves better than this. And I'm going to make sure I never accept less. This is the sacred work of the empath who finally gets angry. Not to hurt anyone, but to save themselves. By now, you've realized something that changes everything. Your anger has been your greatest teacher. Every moment of rage you felt but swallowed was showing you something. Every time you got furious and then immediately apologized for being furious, you were running from wisdom. Your anger has been speaking in a language you're only now learning to understand. Carl Jung believed that the meeting with the shadow is the beginning of individuation, the process of becoming yourself instead of remaining who others need you to be. The empath's anger is the catalyst for this individuation. It's the force that separates you from the collective expectation of what an empath should be and propels you toward who you actually are. And who you actually are is someone who can't be used anymore. Not because you've become heartless, but because you've become aware. You see the patterns now. You recognize the moment someone is asking you to sacrifice yourself. You understand the difference between healthy vulnerability and weaponized neediness. You know when someone is genuinely hurting versus when they're performing hurt to keep you hooked. This awareness is what transforms pleasing into presence. Presence means you show up, but you show up as yourself, not as the version of yourself designed to keep the peace. Presence means you're available, but you're available on your terms, not surrendering your boundaries to prove you care. Presence means you're engaged, but you're engaged with discernment, not just reflexively giving to anyone who asks. The empath who has integrated their anger becomes someone who is actually more helpful than they were before. Because now when you help someone, it's a real choice. You're not helping them to avoid their own pain. You're not helping them to feel worthy of love. You're not helping them because you feel obligated. You're helping them because you genuinely want to and because you have the emotional resources to do so without destroying yourself. This makes all the difference. The person receiving your help can feel it. They know when you're giving from abundance versus when you're giving from a place of depletion. They know when your yes means yes and when it means I'll sacrifice myself to avoid confrontation. Your presence becomes powerful because it's finally real. Jung taught that the psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate. The empath who was unconscious of their anger kept repeating the same patterns with different people. They kept attracting users and narcissists. They kept finding themselves in relationships that required them to disappear. But the empath who has made their anger conscious no longer repeats these patterns. They spot them immediately and walk away. This is the superpower that emerges from your anger, discernment. You can now see people clearly without the filter of your need to be needed. You can assess whether someone is genuinely struggling or whether they're using struggle as a way to avoid responsibility. You can determine whether someone values you or whether they value what you do for them. This clarity is unshakable. And it changes everything about how you move through the world. You stop over-explaining yourself because you no longer need people to understand you. You stop defending your boundaries because you no longer believe boundaries need to be justified. You stop trying to prove your worth because you finally know you're worthy exactly as you are. Your presence becomes commanding not because you're demanding but because you're finally, for the first time in your life, truly present in your own life. The people who loved the old version of you, the one who was always available, always understanding, always making room for them, they struggle with this new version. They may even say you've changed, that you're not as kind, that you've become cold. But what they're really saying is, I miss being able to use you. I miss your endless availability. I miss the version of you that was slowly disappearing. Don't let their discomfort pull you back. Your anger knows what's at stake. It's protecting you from sliding back into the patterns that were destroying you. Carl Jung understood that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. When you accept your anger, when you stop treating it as a character flaw and start treating it as information, you're accepting yourself completely. You're saying, I can be angry and still be good. I can be furious and still be compassionate. I can protect myself and still be kind. I can prioritize my own well-being and still care about others. This acceptance is the bridge between pleasing and presence. On one side is the empath who performed kindness to avoid rejection. On the other side is the empath who expresses genuine care within healthy boundaries. And standing on that bridge, feeling the full force of your anger, you finally understand that you never had to choose between being loved and being yourself. You just had to stop accepting love from people who only loved you when you were disappearing. The transformation deepens as your anger becomes less reactive and more rooted. Initially, your anger feels explosive, a sudden eruption after years of suppression. But as you continue to honor it instead of fighting it, it becomes grounded. It becomes the solid foundation beneath your feet. It becomes the voice that whispers, no, not this. Not anymore. This voice is sacred because it's yours. Not your mother's voice telling you to be nice. Not your religion's voice telling you anger is sinful. Not society's voice telling you that empaths aren't supposed to have edges. Just your voice. Your wisdom. Your boundaries. Jung believed that individuation is the privilege of a lifetime. The empath who has been through this journey of integrating their anger has claimed that privilege. They've become who they actually are underneath all the conditioning. And that person is powerful, clear, and absolutely unwilling to accept less than they deserve. Your anger has transformed you from someone who was slowly disappearing into someone who is finally, gloriously present. Not performing presence. Not manufacturing kindness. But genuinely, authentically present. This is the person the world actually needs, not another martyr sacrificing themselves on the altar of other people's comfort, but someone whole enough to help from a place of abundance. And that person, the one your anger has created, is sacred. You've reached a place you never thought possible. The anger that terrified you has become your greatest ally. The rage you were taught to fear has become the fire that forged you into someone unbreakable. And the person you've become, the one standing on the other side of all this integration work, barely recognizes the one who started this journey. Carl Jung taught that the creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect but by the play instinct acting from inner necessity. The empath's transformation isn't intellectual, it's visceral. It's your soul finally saying, enough. It's your body finally rebelling against the betrayal it's been asked to absorb. It's your spirit finally, after all these years, refusing to die for people who wouldn't give you an hour of their time. The anger that got you here doesn't disappear. It transforms. It becomes less about rage at others and more about reverence for yourself. It becomes less about fury at what happened and more about fierce protection of what you're building now. It becomes the guardian at the gate of your own life, ensuring that never again will you allow someone to use your sensitivity against you. This is when you understand something profound. Your anger was never the problem. Your anger was the solution trying to get your attention. And now that you're finally listening, everything makes sense. The moments you felt rage and pushed it down, your anger was protecting you. The times you felt fury and translated it into understanding, your anger was begging you to protect yourself. The rage you felt at your own behavior, your anger was trying to wake you up before it was too late. Your anger saved your life. And you're only now beginning to understand the magnitude of that gift. Jung believed that the privilege of a lifetime is becoming who you truly are. The empath has finally claimed that privilege. You're no longer apologizing for having needs. You're no longer shrinking to make room for people who take up all the space anyway. You're no longer translating your truth into acceptable versions that won't offend anyone. You're just being yourself, fully and completely, and if that disappoints people, that's their problem now, not yours. The presence you've developed is unlike anything you had before. It's not the hollow performance of always being available. It's the quiet power of someone who knows their worth and refuses to negotiate it. It's the magnetic quality of authenticity. People are drawn to you not because you're easy to use but because you're real. People stay in your life not because they can exploit you but because they respect you. Carl Jung understood that the shadow contains gold. Your anger held so much gold that you're still discovering pieces of it. Pieces of power you didn't know you had. Pieces of clarity that keep revealing new truths. Pieces of self-respect that grow stronger every single day. Your anger has made you rich in ways money never could. The transformation is complete not when the anger disappears but when you stop needing it to validate your choices. You're angry about what happened, yes? But you're no longer angry to justify leaving. You don't need your anger to prove you were right to walk away. You simply know. You know in the marrow of your bones that you made the right choice. That choosing yourself wasn't selfish, it was necessary. That protecting your peace wasn't cruel, it was essential. This knowing is sacred. It's the ground you stand on now. The empath who has journeyed through this integration has become something the world didn't expect, a person with both a tender heart and boundaries made of steel. A person who can feel deeply and still say no. A person who can love genuinely and still walk away. A person who understands that real strength isn't the absence of emotion, it's the ability to feel everything fully and still choose what's best for you. Jung taught that consciousness is the greatest burden and the greatest gift. The empath has claimed both. You're conscious now of how you were used. You're conscious of your own patterns. You're conscious of the ways you abandoned yourself. And yes, this consciousness is a burden. It means you can never unknow what you now know. You can never pretend again that the abuse was acceptable, or that you deserved it. But it's also the greatest gift because it means you'll never make these mistakes again. It means you'll spot manipulation before it takes root. It means you'll recognize your own worth and refuse to let anyone convince you otherwise. It means you'll build a life rooted in authenticity instead of performance. Your anger has given you this gift. By refusing to be silenced anymore, by insisting on being acknowledged, by breaking through every barrier you've constructed to keep it contained, your anger has saved you. It has transformed you from someone slowly disappearing into someone vibrantly, unapologetically alive. The presence you've cultivated isn't something you have to work at anymore. It's simply who you are now. You show up in your own life first. You prioritize your own well-being without guilt. You speak your truth even when your voice shakes. You maintain your boundaries even when maintaining them means disappointing people. You choose yourself even when the world tells you that choosing yourself is selfish. And here's what's miraculous: the people who matter stay. The relationships that were draining fall away naturally because they can't survive when you stop participating in them. New people enter your life, people who see you clearly and choose you anyway, not because you're useful but because you're valuable. Your life becomes smaller in some ways and infinitely richer in all the ways that matter. Carl Jung said that the meeting with the shadow is the apprentice piece, but learning to live with the shadow is the masterpiece. The empath has completed their masterpiece. They've learned to live with their anger, not as something to be managed but as something to be honored. They've learned that rage and compassion can coexist. That fury and gentleness can live in the same person. That being empathetic doesn't mean sacrificing yourself anymore. Your anger was sacred from the beginning. You just needed to survive long enough to see it that way. You needed to feel it fully enough to understand that it was never your enemy. It was your greatest friend, waiting patiently for you to finally listen. And now that you're listening, everything has changed. You've transformed from someone who was slowly disappearing into someone who is gloriously, radiantly present in their own life. Your anger made this possible. Your anger saved you. The empath has risen. And the person standing on the other side of this transformation is someone who will never again apologize for taking up space, never again shrink to make room for someone else's comfort, never again betray themselves for the illusion of being loved by people who didn't actually see them. This is the power of finally, sacredly, claiming your anger as your own.